the IRA man on hunger strike in the Maze prison near Belfast. Members of the Commission are flying from Strasbourg to London, where they're expected to have a meeting with the Foreign Office Minister this afternoon. The commissioners, one from Denmark and the other from Norway, are responding to a request from the hunger striker's sister. Mr. Sands, the recently elected MP for Fermanagh and South Tyrone, is now in the 55th day of his fast. But as our diplomatic correspondent David McNeill explains, it remains to be seen whether the Commission can intervene.
The right of an individual to take his complaint to the Commission of Human Rights was one of the most original features of the European Human Rights Convention signed in 1950. And over the years, petitions from individuals have far outnumbered complaints by governments. In this case, the commissioners must first satisfy themselves that Mr. Sands wants them to carry out an investigation. If that is the case, and if they agree that his petition is admissible, they must establish the facts of the matter, acting in much the same way as an examining judge. They can then try to mediate between the parties in an effort to conclude what the Convention calls a friendly settlement. If that fails, they can refer the case to the European Court of Human Rights or to the Ministers of the Council of Europe. The overwhelming number of applications to the Commission are rejected on the grounds that they do not come under its jurisdiction. But if the Commission decides that an investigation should be held, the British authorities are obliged, under the terms of the Convention, to provide the Commissioners with all the facilities they need, although their conclusions are not binding on the British government.
In the Irish Republic, supporters of Mr. Sands are occupying the former holiday home of Lord Mountbatten. 7 men went into Classiebawn House in County Sligo and unfurled from upstairs windows an Irish tricolour, a white flag and pictures of Sands. In Dublin, the Prime Minister of the Republic, Mr. Charles Haughey, has had talks about Mr. Sands with the leaders of the Fine Gael and Irish Labour parties. The Roman Catholic Primate of All Ireland, Cardinal O'Fee, has issued a strongly worded condemnation of the murder last night of Mr. John Robinson, who was shot by gunmen while driving workmen home in Armagh last night. The Cardinal said the slaughter was not only an act of willful murder, but in the present charged atmosphere was an act of incitement to further sectarian violence. He added, "In the name of the Catholic community, I call for the immediate cessation of these murderous attacks." The train robber Ronald Biggs has set foot again in Brazil, and his first action was to kiss the soil of the country that's given him a safe haven. He's now on his way to Rio de Janeiro, where his 6-year-old son Michael is waiting for him. Biggs flew to Brazil from Barbados, where the Supreme Court decided yesterday that because of a legal technicality, he should not be extradited to Britain. His chartered plane landed in Belém at the mouth of the Amazon. He spent an hour with police in the VIP lounge. Then he boarded a commercial flight to Rio. The couple who've been looking after Michael have taken him to the airport there. The Soviet delegation, led by the party's senior ideologist, Mr. Mikhail Suslov, have returned to Moscow after their surprise
Supporters of Bobby Sands, the IRA hunger striker, occupied Classiebawn Castle today, the County Sligo holiday home of Lord Mountbatten, who was killed in a boat explosion produced by the Provisionals in nearby Mullamore Bay nearly 2 years ago. A short while ago, Peter Gould of Radio Foyle got through to one of the Sands supporters at the castle, Michael McMahon, and talked to him.
We arrived in Mullockmore here about 7 o'clock, 7 of us, and we come into Classiebawn Castle by the main door.
Did you force your way in?
No, we didn't force our way in, We opened the door.
Was there any attempt to move you out of the castle at that stage?
No, there's been no attempt so far. There is members of the Irish police are here, all right, members of the special branch,
I believe that you've been hanging out banners.
That's right, we have banners out in support of hunger striker Bobby Sands, and also an Irish flag flying on the very top of the castle.
How long do you intend to occupy the castle for?
Well, we intend to stay here indefinitely,
Until the hunger strike is resolved?
Quite possible, We will take further instructions from the leadership of the National H Block Committee in Belfast.
Why did you decide on the castle?
Well, it's a resemblance of British imperialism in Ireland.
Was Mr. Tunney there at the time?
Yeah, I was talking to Mr. Tunney, yes.
What's his attitude been to all this?
Mr. Tunney had nothing to say,
What about the police? Are they making no efforts to get you out of the castle?
We've been talking to one of the policemen.
What have they said to you?
Just asked their names,
But there's been no attempt to move you out by force?
Well, we explained to them that if they made any attempt, that they would do a lot of damage because we have the doors barricaded, And there's a lot of high-class furniture here that would be broken if the tidy get in, you know.
So you literally have the place barricaded now?
That's right, yes.
How long do you think you can stay there?
Well, how long do you think Bobby Sands will be alive?
One of the Sands supporters who's occupying Lord Mountbatten's former holiday home in Sligo. Well, the family of Bobby Sands have asked the European Commission for Human Rights to intervene in his case. 2 members of the Commission are on their way to London from Strasbourg, and their first task will be to ascertain that the latest appeal for action has been made with the authorization of Sands himself. I've been talking to James Molynieux, leader of the official Unionists in Northern Ireland, and I asked him first for his reaction to the arrival of the Commission members.
I've always been opposed to Britain being subject to these kind of investigations, that we have surrendered our sovereignty in a great many fields to foreign bodies who have no business interfering in our internal affairs. But having said that, I am a bit puzzled by the activities of the European Commission on Human Rights, because I seem to remember reading that there was a similar suicide in West Germany recently, and I'm wondering, did the Commission interest itself or take any action in that particular issue?
Yes, well, I have no knowledge of that particular case. We're not yet talking about Mr. Sands having committed suicide because he's still alive.
Well,
now, should these officials be given access to Mr. Sands and the H Block?
well, I would say no, that we all have enough faith in British justice, in British prison administration, which is the most enlightened in the world, and certainly the Maze prison compares very, very favourably with anything existing even in the rest of the United Kingdom. And I really do not see what can be achieved by this kind of exercise. I hope that the representatives are not going to attempt to use this opportunity to blackmail Her Majesty's government into capitulating on the maintenance of law and order throughout the United Kingdom, because that's really what it would amount to.
Why?
There wouldn't be any means in the final analysis of dealing with someone on a charge of shoplifting, because if they refuse to pay the fine, they would be imprisoned. They've only got to go on hunger strike, and hey presto, the rescue operation would be mounted and they would have to be released, wouldn't they? So we're talking about the complete abandonment of any attempt to enforce law and order on any issue throughout the whole of the United Kingdom.
But what do you imagine might happen if Mr. Sands does die?
Well, I would hope that the Roman Catholic people of Northern Ireland will remember that some of the rest of us who lead political parties of significance in Northern Ireland have counselled restraint with a great deal of success. It hasn't been easy for us to see members of our own party being gunned down by people who would be the associates and proud to claim themselves as the associates of Mr. Sands. I would hope that people generally, and I would say particularly to the Roman Catholic people in Northern Ireland, that they ought to take all these things into account, and they ought to remember that no one was persecuting Mr. Sands. He was simply being imprisoned for a crime which he had committed. He was not being executed. He has apparently decided that he's going to take his own life, and if he goes to that extent, well then, so be it.
But don't the recent riots in the London area suggest that people will not take his death with equanimity should he die?
Oh yes, that's quite true. If they're deprived of this particular excuse or reason or attempted justification, they will very quickly produce another one, so that we won't get out of it. The only way really to handle this kind of thing is to have the courage which has been shown so far by the Prime Minister and stand up to them.
James Molynieux, leader of the official Unionists.